Hello, Happy Valley. Today's video is all about working with markers or color pencils. I'll be discussing the pros and the cons of each and demonstrating how to properly add color using either of these two mediums. Let's get started. Before we get into the actual assignment, I want to go over the weight of great coloring. So this is a poster that I've created, and I want to say that in all things, take the time to show that you care. So if you look on the left-hand side of this scale, you'll see things that look good, directional. So making sure your coloring is working in a certain direction. Color blending, if you add color blending, you're going to add definition, you're going to add dimension to your art pieces. You can do exterior emphasis. So if you look at that yellow sphere on there, it's more of a cartooned. We've got that dark yellow on the outside and the lighter yellow on the inside. You could do shading, value shading, so talking about working with gray tones, or you can even create all kinds of texture on your art pieces, and you'll see that in the video. I create a lot of texture when I'm working with the markers. On the right-hand side, this is things I don't want to see. A lot of inconsistencies, working in multiple directions, not on purpose. I show you a type of directional or multi-directional coloring, but it doesn't look anything like this one. Balding, I call this balding. So when we've got all this color deposited in certain areas and then we forget to hit the top parts of that, or completely going out of the lines, not on purpose. Sometimes being out of the lines or having that messy look, works, but you have to have it on purpose and not just trying to rush. So inconsistencies, multi-directional, out of the lines, these balding, these are all things that say to me that I'm being careless, that I'm rushing, that I'm just trying to get the assignment done. I want you to take more time. That shows more effort. That proves that you want a better grade. When we are rushing and trying to get things done, that proves that you don't really care about your grade. All right, let's get started on today's assignment. Before we get started, you're going to need some materials. You're going to need some white paper. You're going to need a pencil. You're going to need markers. It doesn't matter what you have to work with, just some markers. And you're going to need some color pencils. It doesn't matter the brand, anything like that. You just need markers and colored pencils. It doesn't even matter what colors you have. We're going to work with what you've got. But first we're going to focus on markers. So I'm going to write markers up here at the very top, and I'd like you to do the same thing. And when you're using markers, they aren't my favorite, to be honest with you. There's so many things that you can do with them, and there's really high quality markers like Copic markers or alcohol-based markers. I'm not going to be using those today. I'm using things that are more familiar or more common that you guys probably have at home. So I'm going to work with Crayola-based markers, but you can use any kind. I'm also going to use maybe some Sharpies, show you a little bit with some Sharpies. I also have a bucket of my own flare pins, so I might use a few of those. But markers, there's a wide variety of them, and they can create different marks depending on the brand. Of course, Copic markers are outrageous. They're usually like $30 to $40 for a pack of 8 or 9. And that's not, those are high quality markers, but that's not what I'm expecting. So when you are using markers, it's really good to use similar colors from the same families. So use similar colors or from the same family. What I mean by family is blue. We have dark blue, light blue, sky blue. You want to kind of stick within the same realm. But one way that we can differentiate and keep in the same color family is through cool and warm colors. So what I'd like you to do is make 2 rectangle boxes. They don't have to be big. Mine are probably 2.5 inches by by a 1/2 inch. Right? And we're going to divide each one of these into 3 sections. So you're going to draw 2 vertical lines down. They don't have to be perfectly even. Don't worry about that. This is all about practice. And one of those ways that we break up colors is with warm and cool. So I want you to write warm under the first one and cool under the second one. Now we'll learn a lot more about warm and cool colors and color when we get to the element of art color, but this is just kind of a brief little introduction. So warm colors are going to be things like red, orange, yellow. I like to think of them as colors that you would create fire. Fire is nice and warm or hot. So what I would like you to do is, if you have those types of colors, please color in the little boxes, and you can color them solidly. I'm just going to hatch them on here so you can see that. Hatching, we'll learn a little bit more about that in a moment, but I'm making little lines on here. Just so we can see the difference. And when you're working with markers, it's really good to, again, keep them in their color family. So these type tones, these type colors work perfect together, especially when you're trying to create depth in your pictures. And now cool colors. You're going to have green as a cool tone, blue, and purple. So these I consider, like, think of a cool night, or maybe being by the lake, cool tones to that. So these are your cool colors. So green, blue, and purple. That's not to say that cool tones and warm tones can't work together. That is not what I'm saying. But when we're working with markers, it's really good to kind of keep them in the same similarity or same color family. So if you've got, a variety of blues, you can work with them together. If you've got a variety of oranges, you can work them together. Red and orange work well together. But if you're taking red and green together, we're going to get a brown color. It's not going to look right. So you kind of want to keep them close to each other. Now, one thing is yellow and green. They are very similar. So this is not a break in the middle. They're actually, these two right here are kind of connected, and they work quite well together. All right. So don't forget about your yellow and green. They can cross the little rainbow bridge, and they can work together. All right. So what I'd like you to do is create 2 more boxes. Doesn't matter. They don't have to look exactly like mine, but create a little box. And I want you to write under the first one, hatching. I was talking about that earlier. Hatching. All right, and then I want you to create another one. And this one we're going to write cross hatching. I want you to label these because I want to see how you work with these. All right, so hatching is creating strokes in the same direction. And I'm going to switch to some Crayola markers. I'm going to work with blues, these little Crayola markers I have. And I'm going to use them for hatching. And I'm keeping them in the same family. So these are all blue colors. I'm keeping them all in the same family. And I'm going to start with my lightest color. And hatching is simply going in one direction. I'm making these little tiny strokes all going together in the one direction. Now I'm working in a box. This is a linear shape. When we're coloring, you want to know if you're working with a linear or a curve, a linear shape. A box is a linear shape. Linear meaning lines. Okay, so I've got all these lines going in the same direction. And as I'm hatching, I'm going to try and make a gradient. Okay, gradient is from light to dark. So I started with markers. It's good to start light and then gradually add your darker colors to it. So I'm going to try, and now I'm going to go with my second darker blue color and go over top of that first one. Still working in the same direction. I'm hatching. But notice as I'm kind of staying towards the center, the middle, I'm adding more dark there. I'm working my way down, really keeping that heavy line right over here. Notice up here at the top, I've kind of left just that lighter blue up there. I haven't really gone with the second value of blue over top of that. I'm going to do a little bit, but not much. And then I'm going to come in with my third color of blue. I'm still hatching. I'm going in the same direction. I'm going to work from the left-hand side, adding just, as I'm getting over here, I'm going to separate my lines a little bit more. I want it really heavy down here on the left-hand side. And with markers, you know, they're pretty permanent, okay? There's really no way to pick that up or blend them unless you've got Copic markers and things that have alcohol in them. These do not have alcohol in them. They are water-based. Most regular markers are going to be water-based, and so they don't blend as well. So this is kind of how you can blend. Now you can simply color, you know, left and right, or up and down, and fill a space. There's nothing wrong with that method, but you're not going to get a lot of depth, a lot of dimension in your art piece. It's going to be more flat, more two-dimensional when you're working with markers, especially when you're just flat out coloring. So down here we're going to do cross hatching, and I'm going to use Sharpies this time. So I'm going to choose a different color, and I'm going to work in that same family, and I'm going to use these greens I've got, and I'm going to add in this yellow into it. I'll probably ruin the yellow. Yellow is one of those colors that gets ruined quite easily, especially when you are working with markers. So I try to be really, really careful with my yellow. And a tip that I can give you when working with markers is to have a test paper. Okay, actually I'm going to put that right up here. It's really good to, this is a tip, is have a test paper. I like this because if I want to check, you know, what color it is, don't just automatically believe what you see, you know, especially when you're working with certain markers. This might look like a dark yellow, but it might come out looking quite neon. So and once you've put it on your paper, it's pretty much there. And the more you try to hide it, you'll find that it makes it stand out even more. So it's really good to have a test paper to test your markers on before you put it on the actual piece. Plus, your marker might be drying out, and if you started working on it, I've had this happen a lot with kids. Our marker has dried out, and now there is no other color that replaces that. So test out those markers. So we're going to do cross hatching. If hatching is in one direction, cross hatching must mean that it's going in two directions, or at least two directions. Again, I'm going to start with my lightest value, so I'm going to start with my yellow. That way I don't ruin it. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing. Look at all that space in between. And my yellow is really going to be dominating over here on the right-hand side because I'm going to go from darkest to lightest. This time, though, I'm going to go in a different direction. So I'm crossing these. I've gone at a diagonal. Now I'm going from the top down as another diagonal. I'm going to pick my next color, my next darkest color, which is this like little lime green color. I don't think they have names. And I'm going to come in here and kind of add in a little bit more. But notice how I'm not really filling in a lot of space. When you are working with markers and you're trying to, you know, create a a depth with markers, you want to, it's all about spacing. Okay, it's more about spacing these markers out, and so you don't really need to color in the whole space. You need to leave a little bit of white. The more white you leave, or the more space in between, it makes that color appear lighter. All right, gonna come in with my next color. I'm finding that I'm not a big fan of these Sharpies. They're pretty much over-dominating this piece. I actually really like the Crayola marker that I used here. I feel like this Sharpie is just overpowering. And it's very unforgiving. You can see really, really dark marks. Not a big fan of it. To be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of markers when it comes to trying to do fine art pieces. Yes, with higher quality markers, I'm a big fan of those, obviously. But when it comes to projects that we're doing in class, I'm not a big fan of markers simply because they are so unforgiving and just dominating. They're very deep, they're very rich in color. All right, so there is my cross hatching. You see it, you don't get the same feeling as you do from this one. This has a lot more depth to it. All right, so we worked with a linear shape. Remember, something that is done with lines. We're now going to try a curvilinear shape. We're going to do hatching and cross hatching, but on a curvilinear shape. Think of a curved circle. So we're going to make 2 circles on here. They don't have to be perfect, but if you're one of these perfectionists that the circle has to be perfect, go find you something to trace. Something larger than a quarter, but not too big. We don't want to take up too much space on our paper. But honestly, it doesn't have to be perfect. It could be an oval for all I care. What I like to do when I'm drawing a circle is hover above the paper and get my hand ready in that same motion. And when I'm ready, I just make contact. There's my little circle. All right, so we're going to make 2 of these. So again, I hover above the paper. When I'm ready to make contact, I do. My circle is not perfect at all. All right, so we're going to do hatching on the first one, and we're going to do cross hatching on the second. So when you are working with a curvilinear shape, you want to follow that shape. And especially when we're trying to make a circle look like a sphere, we really want to follow that shape, okay? So I'm going to go back to my blue markers, back to those Crayola markers, and I'm going to work with my lightest marker first. And I want to follow that shape, right? And you're going to notice, watch how I'm doing this. I'm not making full contact with my pen. I'm not making full contact. Not to say that you can't, but that really emphasizes something when we make a solid line around it. Remember that a descriptive line is an outline, and we're really emphasizing when we do that. And I don't like that. I don't like that look. If you like that look, you do it, okay? But I like to make short little hatch strokes. And over on the right-hand side is where I really want my dark area. I'm going to have my lighter area over here. So I've tried to lift up my marker as best as I can and make very little contact with it. I put a little bit more pressure on the right-hand side, and I'm going to really go over that. But I'm going in these hatch marks, so these little tiny hatch marks, but I'm going in the direction of my shape. And I'm really, really, really adding a lot of depth over here on the right-hand side. I'm kind of leaving that left-hand side bare. And come back around. I'm working in a curvilinear shape. And I do this pretty quickly. I'm building it up, building it up. And if you notice, I'm making it, I've got a small circle over here. I'm kind of going towards it, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller because that's my highlight. That's where my light is directly hitting. Okay, so I don't need to color that whole thing in, but I'm going in the shape of the circle. I'm making a more C-shaped hatch. Or over here, we weren't really linear. Move the paper if it makes it easier for you. I'm left-handed, so you'll see me moving the paper. I'm trying to keep it still for you guys right now because I'm doing a demonstration. But anyway, so I'm going to kind of leave that space. If I need to come back, I'll add a little bit more. But I'm going to move on to my next value, my second value. And I'm going to do the same thing, except this time I'm really going to add more, pay attention more to this right-hand side with this color. I'm going to really give that depth. But notice as I'm working my way still towards that other one, I'm just making a lot more space in between. I'm still coming over here just a little bit though. And I'm not focusing on the outer edge because I wanted this side to be my lighter side. I'm really focusing more on that dark area. One thing that can happen with markers I've noticed too is, if you keep coloring over the same spot, especially if you're working with thin paper, you're going to break through that paper and you're really going to compromise the paper, the fibers of the paper. And once you compromise that, there's no going back, no matter what you do. So, really having a good game plan with markers is important, and thinking things through. That's why I do suggest that you work with colored pencils, especially for the project we're going to do with shape for our tessellations. But it's up to you. I've opened it up to you. My students have pleaded with me over the years and begged me to let them use markers, and I'm finally listening to them. So although it's not one of my favorites, if it's something that excites you or that's what you want to work with, then I'm willing to allow you. All right, and I've got my third color, and I'm really going to focus now on this right-hand side. I'm actually going to give a nice emphasized line. I'm really going to add a lot of depth to this part. And as I get towards the top, I thin it out. I'm actually not going to come over here at all. So I've just kind of really added that depth in there. And I'm going to come in here and focus this to the right-hand side. Now, working with hatch marks is going to create more texture. Okay, a lot of texture in your art piece. So if that's something you don't want, don't work with a hatch. But I really feel that you can create a lot of depth into these places when you use that. Now, you are also more than welcome to mix mediums. So if you want to work with markers and color pencils, you can do that. And I'm going to show you, we're going to come back to this one. We're going to add a little bit of color pencil in there in that white space. With color pencils, you can control your pressure, which will control how much of the pigment is placed on your paper. So we're going to come back to this one, and we're going to add a little bit more to it. All right, cross hatching, and I'm going to go back to the Sharpies with the cross hatching. I'm going to work with my lightest color, which would be the yellow. We're going to do the same thing, except I'm going to go a different direction. So a lot of this is that hatching. Notice as I'm laying it down over here on the dark side, when I get to the left, I am lightly picking it up. One thing I'd like to say about working with yellow, when you've got a pencil drawn down on it and you're working with a yellow marker, it's good to come back and with an eraser, lightly erase just to where you can still see the pencil. I've already gone over this pencil. It's staying. There's nothing I can do with my eraser that's going to pick it up. The permanent marker has already been placed on here. It has already covered it. But when you are working with yellow, erase a little bit. I can still see my line there, but it will kind of hide that dark mark that's created from the pencil. I really don't like these Sharpies. I'm creating that same type. My highlight. I just feel like I don't know. Not a fan of the Sharpie. for this. So I've laid that on there, and now I'm going to come back over and crosshatch, but I'm still working in a curvilinear shape. Okay, so I'm still working in that curved shape. I'm just going in a different direction. Come back in. It's just so dominating and such a thick mark. I don't know. I really like those markers I was using, those Crayola markers. I don't even know what they are. They are fine line markers, and I've seen a lot of other people that use them. I tend to like them. All right, so we're going to come back in here now with our next value. Still working in that hatching motion. Notice as I lay most of the dark shade over on the right hand side, I'm still kind of coming over here a little bit, but I'm really leaving it with that. Then we're going to come in again and we're going to do the cross hatching, but we really want to focus that cross hatch down here. Now, cross hatching doesn't mean that every single line has to cross, right? It means that you've got a little bit of cross hatching in there. I just don't like it. I don't know. Just, ugh. And then when I put this on here, I don't know if I'm going to use this one. I'm going to use this bluey or green to really give that depth. I cut out that middle one. I just felt like it was too rich. Crossing, crossing. I'm not a fan. Really not a fan of the Sharpie. I'm not a fan. All right. So we're going to quit with the markers and we're really going to focus on color pencils because I honestly think color pencils is the best option. So you can, if you want to, draw you a line here. And we're going to work with our color pencils. So now I'd like you to write colored pencil. And there's so many types of colored pencils out there, just as there are markers. And one of those brands is the Prismacolors. You'll see these a lot. They sell them at Walmart. They sell them at Hobby Lobby, at Michael's. One thing I would tell you, if you're interested in getting some of these and you're going to go to Hobby Lobby or Michael's, find a coupon. They've always got a coupon online. I know Hobby Lobby is probably the best place. They have like a 40% off coupon. You can get these a lot cheaper because they're pretty expensive. I think this is just a pack of 24, and I believe it's $25, right around that, depending on where you're going. These are high quality, okay? These are Premier pens or color pencils. They also have, these are artist grade, but they also have, Prismacolor has created some called Scholarly or Scholar, I think, and they are a student grade, but they're still a high quality color pencil. They come in these little tins, and when they're really good color pencils. I think they're nice, they're smooth, they're rich, they lay down quite well. These are not a requirement for you at all, but I'm just saying if you are interested in purchasing some color pencils, you can't go wrong with these. And they come in different packs from 12 to 24, all the way up to like 100 and something. It's outrageous. But they're a lot better than student grade pencils, which would be like Crayola. The reason is they have a lot less wax in them, more pigment in them. Crayola color pencils have a lot of wax. And I'd also invest in a pencil sharpener of some sorts if that's what you're going to work with. It's nice to keep those pencils sharp. A problem that I have with students a lot when they're working with colored pencils is, we like to tap them. And I'm not going to use my colored pencils to do that, but we sit here and we tap things, or we, bang the pencil. And what that's actually doing is it's breaking up the graphite that's inside the pencil. So when you work with my materials, I've had kids that have been handling them, and they're a little rough with them. So try not to do that, because you're going to break that material inside of the pencil, and then whenever you go to sharpen it, it's going to keep breaking and breaking and breaking because you're having some issues. So I'm going to work with the Crayola color pencils. I've got me a little 12-pack here for this assignment, and they're perfect. They're not even that bad. I absolutely hate rose art. They are awful. These have a lot of wax in them, but they still can create bright, bold colors. The rose art are just extremely waxy. They are not, they do not match what the exterior of the pencil looks like. They're just, I'm not a big fan of those, but work with what you got. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a few boxes on here. I'd like you to create 3 boxes. They don't have to be perfect. Just draw you out 3 boxes. And the first one we're going to write is light pressure. Light pressure. Second one we're going to do is heavy pressure. And the third one we're going to do is a grade 8 or a gradient. But we're going to put grade 8, and we're going to go from H, so from heavy, to L, light. Okay. So pick you out a color. You can swap colors every time if you would like. It's up to you. I'm going to pick something a little bit darker so we can see it on the screen. I've got a purple and light pressure. So when you're working with colored pencils, you can really change the way the mark looks based on how you are holding the pencil, how you are pressing against the pencil. I like to, when I'm trying to really color in certain areas, I like to hold the pencil sideways. Okay, so you can kind of see I'm holding it sideways. I'm not holding it vertically. Right? I'm holding it kind of at a diagonal angle. Right? And I like to place my pointer finger up here to give a little bit of control. The further away from the tip of the pencil, the less control you have. Okay? So I'm going to, again, hold it sideways, and I'm going to really put some light pressure on here. So all I'm going to do is just pretty much I'm hovering above the paper, and I'm working my way vertically from north to south, south to north. I'm working my way across this. So what I like about working with light pressure is that light pressure makes it more buildable when you're working with a color pencil. I can go over here and add another, violet color or light color or blue, anything close to that color, and really build that up. So I like light pressure because it's more buildable. And it's also not so hard on your hands. We're going to be doing a lot of coloring for our tessellations, and sometimes your hand can get overexhausted depending on the grip you have. So really, holding on to that pencil, barely holding on to that pencil. And now I can kind of go back in here and build it up. Now I am working linear because I'm working on a linear shape. All right, so now we're going to grip this pencil like we have a death grip on it, like it owes us money, okay? And we're going to put a lot of pressure into this. So what we're going to do is taking that pencil again, and this time I'm put a lot of pressure. I'm gritting my teeth when I do this because I'm just laying into that pencil. Now it creates a really rich tone. So I was able to create this light shade or this darker shade depending on the amount of pressure I did. Now, heavy pressure has its moments when it's useful, especially when you're really trying to um, give a lot of depth or darkness into a particular area. But, so it does have its good points. But what I worry about the most with heavy pressure, and this, a lot of my students have this, is it becomes so tiresome. It really is exhausting on your hand because of that death grip that you have on the pencil. So, there are moments when this is required, but you should not really be working with this through the whole thing. And you can really tell it doesn't give it a lot of depth. It gives it very flatness. It's very two-dimensional looking when you work with a lot of pressure because you can't add more colors on top of it. You could, but it gets muddy and it's not really good. So what we're going to do now is a gradient, and that's going from a heavy pressure to a light pressure or vice versa. But for us, we're going to do heavy to light. So we're going to start out with heavy pressure, and then as we work our way to the right-hand side, we're going to slowly release that amount of pressure. So really heavy over here on the left-hand side. As I work my way, I'm becoming a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter. All right, and I've got pretty much a really dark line right here, and then it's pretty much light the rest of the way. So I can come back now and go over it a little bit more. So I'm a little bit heavier. Now I'm getting a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter. Again, more. I'm really trying to make it nice and smooth from left to right. It's all based on pressure. I had to rotate the pencil a little bit because we were getting, and that looks a little bit better. Okay, so a nice grade 8 or gradient is from dark to light, and this can be beneficial when you want to work with one color. All right, so we're going to scoot this up a little bit, and now we're going to work with our primary colors. Now, you might not know your primaries. Some of you actually do, and that's fine. We're going to do a quick little lesson on primaries. And primaries are the colors that cannot be mixed. They are the ones that create all colors. So we're going to make 3 boxes, just like we did before. 1, 2, and 3. They don't have to be perfect. All right, if you are a perfectionist, this is not the time to do it. This is just for practice. All right, so we are going to blend with the primaries. If you know, like math, the number prime means it cannot be broken down anymore. Same thing with art. So our primaries are red and yellow. So R and Y, yellow and blue. So Y and B. Our 3 primaries, I'm sorry, are red, yellow, and blue. And then over here we're going to do red and blue. So R and B. All right. I'd like you to, hopefully you have these colors in your palettes. But red, yellow, and blue. So these are our 3 primaries. All right, so with the first one, we're going to work with red and yellow. What I'd like you to do is take your red and you are going to create a gradient, really dark on one side, working our way over to the right-hand side. We're going to do light pressure. So if you need to add more, just go back and forth, back and forth. Notice as I'm also working directionally. All right, and our second one is going to be yellow. So what we're going to do for this one is we're going to work dark pressure on the bottom and work our way light pressure up to the top. And now these colors are going to blend. Not the best, but they will blend. Now we should get sort of a orangey shade. because when they mix together, they make an orange shade. Again, not the best, but this really gives a lot more depth to it. Okay. Our next one we're going to work with is the yellow. So we're going to work from left side, heavy pressure, right hand side, light pressure. I'm going to come back in with the blue, and from the bottom, work with our heavy pressure up to a lighter pressure. It does in some ways give us a green. See, but where we've got so much wax buildup with these colored pencils, it doesn't really give us a good shade with the heavy pressure. Heavy pressure is not good, especially with these Crayola pencils. You know, it's just, there's so much wax buildup that it really doesn't let a blend happen. Okay, and then our last one is red, going from our heavy pressure to our light pressure. So if you're going to try to blend with the Crayola, work with that light pressure. You can really build things up better. And then coming in here with the blue. And in a sense, we do the crosshatch. So you can blend them, but if you've got a lot of pressure on there, it's really not going to happen. All right, and we're going to do one little last thing. We're going to work on some curvilinear shapes with those colored pencils. So I'd like you to make 3 little circles. And our first one is going to be called exterior emphasis. And that's kind of what I went over when I talked about that poster board in the very beginning. So the exterior emphasis. And I sometimes refer to this as cartooning. You're emphasizing. Cartoon is a descriptive line, and you're emphasizing it. And then we're going to do a gradient, which is a grade 8. Whatever color you choose. And then we're going to do a great example of a rushed coloring. All right, so pick a color, any color that you want to work with. I'm going to work with green. Okay, an exterior emphasis, and a lot of people color this way, and if this is how you choose to do it, be my guest. But an exterior emphasis, in my opinion, is cartooning. Okay, we're emphasizing, we're coloring in sections. So it always has a heavy pressure on the outside and then light pressure on the inside. Now you need to go in a circular motion or a curvilinear motion when you're working with a round shape. If you work very linear in a round shape, you're really going to flatten that. It's just not going to give you the same effect. Now if you're trying to do that, then continue on. But notice I'm working in a curvilinear. I'm working as a circle. Heavy on the outside, lightening up as I go to the inside. And you can really create a lot of values even just using one color pencil here. But this is an exterior emphasis, and I call this kind of cartooning because we're kind of blocking in that color. And we're emphasizing the exterior of that. You can do that with a black marker too, and I always have kids that want to use a black Sharpie at the very end. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of that. I feel like sometimes you don't need to emphasize, but I know a lot of my students like that cartooned look. So I'm not going to tell you no, but anyway, this would be an exterior emphasis. So you've got a lot of a heavy pressure on the outside. You're really blocking that in with a descriptive line, and then you're kind of doing a light pressure on the inside. Not wrong, but a little bit more of a juvenile type of coloring. So if you're really wanting to push yourself artistically, try to avoid that and try going with something else. So now I'm going to do a gradient, and I'm going to use blue. And we're going to do a nice little, heavy pressure to light pressure. And pretty much the same thing that we did up here with the markers. But I'm going to just come in here and work on, I'm not coloring the outside, I'm working on the inside first. And I'm kind of placing my heavy pressure on the right hand side. That's where I want that to look. And you can, I love this. Actually, I'm going to do a gradient with a crosshatch. So I'm going to put that in here. Gradient with crosshatch. Okay. So we can really see how you can blend these colors. And I like sometimes using the tip of the pencil like this, but it's going to give us a lot of color deposit. So if you don't want all that, use the side of the pencil. But for this one, I'm going to keep my pencil vertical. And I'm doing what I did before, same thing with the markers, except I'm able to kind of keep the pencil located on the paper without it causing me too many problems. If I were to do that with a marker, we would have a lot of deposit of pigment onto the page, but I'm able to keep my pencil on here. All right, so I've got my blue color placed on here, and I'm going to use the same blue, but I'm going to crosshatch. Now you could use a different blue. Actually, pause. I'm going to use purple. All right, this is really going to give us a nice gradient. So I'm going to use purple. This time I'm going in a different direction. I'm crosshatching. And you can kind of see on here, I'm focusing more on this dark area, and I'm able to kind of build this up and create a nice value in here. Focusing again more on the bottom right hand side, not so much about where I want the lighter values. But it can create a pretty cool gradient. Light pressure, light pressure, light pressure. Over on the right hand side, heavier pressure. And I'm going to kind of go over top of that blue with this violet. And it creates a really nice, gradient that you can build up on. All right, and this is the bad example. Don't do things like this. I get this a lot of the time. We're trying to rush and get things done, and we're just going to get in here and color this in as fast as we can because we're trying to get the assignment done. All right. When I see things like this is cross-hatching. I'm cross-hatching, but I mean, look at the, okay, look at the inconsistency that we have over here. Look at the heavy pressure to light pressure. There's a lot of gaps. We're not following inside the lines. Okay, and it just doesn't give us the same effect. This looks extremely juvenile, something more professional, something intermediate. But this is just, I don't want to see things like this at all. Now, one thing you can do to really darken things is working with a black and a white color pencil. So I'm going to come back over here, and I really want to emphasize this area. So I'm just using just a little bit of black. Black is a very dominating value. So I'm going to come in here, and I really kind of want to add to this and really give it some depth. But notice I'm just working on one part. Lighter pressure, and it really kind of emphasizes and gives this stuff a lot more depth. I can come in here and kind of bring that around, and it changes that image completely. I get a lot of the times, what the heck is this white pencil for? With color pencils, and it's a good blending pencil. It's really meant to blend. I don't know if it's going to be able to show up on here. But try it out. Go over it, and you'll see that it kind of just pushes the color around, and it smooths it out a little bit. You could probably see it a lot better on the heavier. I don't know. But it's meant to blend and push things around a little bit better. Again, we're working with color pencils or with Crayola pencils, so they're going to be more waxy, and the white is not more obsolete. If you're working with Prismacolors, you would really see a difference when using those extra values. All right, so I said I was going to go back up here and just mix the color pencil with the marker. You don't have to do this, but I just wanted to show you. So now I'm going to come back over here with the color pencil, and I'm going to color in with a light blue and fill in those gaps. And you can really, you know, if you wanted to use markers, I really think it would be smart to kind of mix marker with color pencil, because it really adds a lot more dimension to this. And I actually like it even more. So again, I'm just filling in that space, keeping that middle section right there pretty light, but I'm just kind of adding this in here, and it really helps bump it up. Let's see what it does with the Sharpie. I'm going to use the yellow. So I'm going to come back in here with the yellow, and I'm just going to fill that space in and really get that in here. It's just not really hitting the mark for me. I'm going to take the lighter green, see if maybe that does something else. See if I can save this. A little bit. I just really like this. This is like the 8th time you've told us, Miss Sess, as we know. All right, guys, so this is what I would like to see, something along these lines, working with markers and color pencils. I really want you to try out these two materials and see which one or both that you want to use for your tessellation. Avoid trying to rush things. If we're getting tired, if our hand is getting exhausted, rest. Put it down, walk away, go do something else, come back to it. Don't try to rush. When we rush, it shows your lack of interest, lack of desire to do well. So anyway, there we go. Markers and color pencil practice. Good luck.